so I guess we can start. So, well, first of all, like one needs to understand like what is like what are the poetic devices, first of all. So, well, like when you talk about like a language, whether it is Kinyarwanda, whether it is like English or French, each language has like its own devices, has its own like form of words or elements, or which are verbal, which are visual, which are structural or rhythmic, or even metrical, that guides that language, the way it is, like the way it is written, the way it is understood, and also the way it can be like expressed depending like on what you want to do. For example, if you want to write a text has its own devices like connectors and others. And also a poem has its own devices like the rhythm, the grammar, the elements, and all other kind of devices that can showcase different kind of things. Notably, we can say that, for example, if maybe you are, for example, writing an essay, a device in an essay can be like showing an emotion that you are showing in your essay. It can also show, for example, an argument that you're having or a discussion that you're making. So the same thing applies to poetry. So in poetry, you also have different elements in a poem that might constitute devices. Those can be like verbal, as I said, or visual, or structural, or rhythmic, or metrical, or grammatical elements, and so many others. And like those devices that are either verbal or visual or structural, as I said, there are tools just which are used by poets so that they can augment, or so that they can show the meaning of a poem, or make it rhythmic so that it can please someone's ears or someone's eyes which are reading. And also it can also intensify the core emotion of the mood, like shows, for example, the emotion or mood in which, or even the feeling of the one who is represented in the poem, or the one who is presenting the poem. Like, for example, if you're talking about a breakup, you will use devices that will be showing either that will be visual or grammatical or even metrical, like which shows exactly what kind of mood you are in while you're presenting your poem. For example, if you are presenting, or if you are performing a poem which is sad, you will show like a poem that like will show feelings and emotions, which shows that really you are sad. And you will also use the grammatical elements, whether they are like vocabularies or other kind of words, which shows that really you are sad in the poem. So there are different poetic devices which are used. So like irony, like for example, when you say irony, is like when you're saying something but you really don't mean that thing that you are saying. For example, when you say like the example which is showcased here on the screen, like your heart is soft as a stone in the ocean. Like a stone is not soft at all, so it means like your heart is hard. Like it means like completely the opposite of what the person has said. Like when you're talking about the so
Hello.
Hello. So I'm sorry. So I had to respond to someone's call immediately. So I was on irony. So when you talk about irony, like it's when you're saying something but you completely mean a different thing. And most of the cases are the opposite. So like when you say irony, for example, for the example which is showcased here, like your heart is soft as a stone in the ocean, it simply means a different thing because a stone can never be soft. And also like the ocean is too vast. Like it means just simply that your heart is not, you are not simply a good person. So you can also use a metaphor, you see. So and when you talk, when you use a metaphor as a poetic device, it means like, for example,
Hi,
you are
Perfect.
writing. Yeah.
You can check there
Are
are
you
people banging on the door. You see if there
okay?
are some people in the waiting room.
Yeah, I have seen them and I have admitted them, including Kimirantare.
Okay.
Okay, so they are joining.
Yeah.
Then
As
yeah,
they join.
yeah, I can continue. So is my mic on? Yes. So like, for example, if you say maybe when you are using metaphor, it's like you're using a word just to express another one. So those are like different, mostly used metaphors, like mostly even he in the space that we are mostly using, mostly irony and metaphors. So others we can find them. So there is a completely long list of metaphors like alliteration, ambiguity, antithesis, allusions, assonance, allegory, analogy, and so on and so forth. So there are different, like we can talk of some of the poetic devices that we have. So we have like different type of poetic devices, like which can be incorporated in a poem, so that can be more meaningful and filled with imagery. Like we have like when you're using the poetic devices in your poem, like you try to illustrate to the one who is reading or listening to the poem, you show him like the way he can even imagine what is going on in the poem. Like you are reading a poem, but you can already picture out like what is going on in the poem, so that it can have more a more meaningful meaning, so that to the one who is reading, to the reader who is reading, instead of seeing just lines which are being written or a text which has no soul and meaning. So those poetic devices will be helping the reader to understand like how is the poem going, like what is the rhythm, like what is going on. You can picture out like the scene which is written in the poem. So like, for example, you can have different form of poetic devices which are based on different characters, but you can now list four. Like there are poetic devices which are used to add sounds of words. It means like, for example, if I'm going to say, if I'm using, I want to annotate like a sound in of a poem, like in a stanza, for example, there will be stanzas which starts maybe with A, and stanzas which can start with an S, and stanzas which can start with a T. So you say tea tree tomatoes are good, and like you find the T is recurring, and you have this sound which is recurring in a stanza or even in a poem. So those kind of sounds like which are given to words are also part of poetic devices. So this also can be used to enhance the meaning of words. Like you can use like a poetic devices, for example, like the irony or even the metaphor, so that you can like and use a word to express another word. Like for example, I can say you are just as hot as the sun. So like the sun is like expressing the meaning that you want to give to that person. It means like that person is as hot as the sun, but actually no one can be as hot as the sun. So it means simply that you have this, like the hotness as the sun, like that is a metaphor that you're using. That is a word that is used to enhance the meaning of other words so that someone can understand really what you want to compare that person to. So that also we can also use them to arrange the words in a certain order of sequence. So as I said, in adding the sounds of words, like when you're using poetic devices, it also helps you to arrange your words in a certain order. Like you have words that follows each other, but like for example, you have in a stanza, you have words that always are finishing the lines of your stanzas. Like for example, if you maybe may finish with fire, like in the first stanza, the second, the third, the fourth, also you have those words that are finishing the stanzas, or those words which can be, you find like in the middle of each stanza. Like you arrange the words depending on the sounds, depending on the meaning, and depending on the rhythm that you are giving to the poem. And also, those poetic devices can also be used to create like imagery through words. Like you want to create someone in your stanzas, like you are describing someone who walks like, maybe for example, may say like she walks like the moon and smiles like the sun. Like you try to imagine that person who is walking like the moon, and who is sitting, who is smiling as the sun, and who is sitting like the ocean. So you try to picture out this image in your mind. So, and this makes it more good when you are read for the reader and the one who is listening to the poem as well. So there are different English poetic devices which can be used to create a rhythm. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of them. We have one that you can call onomatopoeia, if I can say, read it so. So in simple words, this poetic device can be termed like as the creation of a word describing its sound. Some popular examples of the words sounding similar to their meaning are roar, crab, moo, etc. For example, if you like in this kind of poetic device is used like when you want to describe a sound. Like for example, you know that a lion is roaring. So the lion was chasing this person and it started roaring. So you cannot like say that the lion was speaking or the lion was shouting, or even if you find
Perfect.
like yes.
Yeah, you can let some people in.
Yeah, there are people are hanging on their doors.
Yeah, and
So
also JDC, I think he's in.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, Angelina and iPhone are coming in. So GDC is there. I think you can pick up from where I was if there's no problem, or I can continue.
JDC, if you can hear us.
Yeah, yes. I mean,
So are you able to continue?
are you guys muri kunyumva?
Yes.
Imvura iri kugwa hano, muranyihanganira, sinzi niba muri kunyumva neza, right?
We are hearing you.
Okay, fine. So thank you, Parfait, for saving my network was failing me, but now I'm here. We can go on for the remaining poetic devices. I'm just going to focus on these poetic devices which are figurative, the ones that help us. Sorry?
Yeah, we are hearing you. Can you share your screen?
I'm just going to share my screen. Can you enable host? I mean, you have disabled. Okay. Can you allow me to share my screen? It's disabled. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Yes. So try again and tell me.
Let's see. Okay. Okay,
Hello?
so I'm going to talk about
Yes, continue.
okay, I'm going to talk what are poetic devices. I hope you have covered it. They are tools that help a poet or a poet can use to create a rhythm, enhance poems meaning, or intensify a mood or feeling. So poetry can follow strict structure or none at all, but many different types of poems use poetic devices, meaning you might be specialized in one or more poetic devices. Like you might be using one poetic device as your main your main like it's your main type, so it's like you like to use it in your poems, like it became your signature. So I'm just going to go through these figurative poetic devices because we have a short time. The figurative poetic devices are the devices, poetic devices that affect the poem in a sense of its meaning. Like you use these figurative poetic devices to give the poem another kind of meaning and another sense. Like for example, the hyperboles, the imagery, the metaphors. I'm just going to focus on this, and I've seen that Parfait was talking about these auditory poetic devices, which devices that help, I mean, affect the poem in the sense of the way it sounds. Like these alteration, assonance, and onomatopoeia. So I'm going to focus on these figurative poetic devices for the moment. Let's go by the hyperboles. The hyperbole are the figurative poetic devices in which a figure of speech which uses extreme exaggeration, meaning this poetic device gives when you read a poem which has something in which its meaning is very exaggerated, like for example, let's say imitoma in the Kinyarwandan poetry. Sometimes many of those poems are hyperboles, meaning they are things which cannot really happen in this real world. But in poetry, you try to bring them closer. I mean, you put those words together so that they can have another meaning. So that if you read it, you feel like, oh, this guy is exaggerating. For example, this extract, I love you, dear. I love you till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the streets. Like, if you read these words, they are actually impossible to happen in this real life. But when you're telling someone you love, you might say some things which are extremely exaggerated, but just to express your feelings. So there comes the hyperboles. There are these figurative poetic devices which helps us to express exaggerated feelings, exaggerated moods, and the exaggerated poems. Excuse me.
Continue.
Okay.
I
So
think
next we
we're
excuse me.
remaining for this webinar, remaining with 1 minute. I don't know if we can start another one. As que not perfect.
Yeah, I understand, but just let it continue. I've
Give me
tried some.
Yeah, give me
Okay.
5 minutes. I'll be done.
Yeah,
Just
continue. Just continue.
Yeah. So imagery, when you talk about imagery, we mean the mental impression summoned by a word, phrase, or a sentence. These are the poetic devices which helps when you're reading them. You have this kind of image or the actions as you read the words, the actions that those words are portraying. They feel like they're happening in your brain. So that's why they call imagery. They give the image of they give the reader the sense of image or through the words that the words that they're describing, so that when you read them, you also come to think about like the action is really happening. For example, in this poem, tender like a night in June, sweeter than a honeymoon, brighter than a silver spoon.
I guess I had finished with the onomatopoeia, which is like just um, like those are sounds which are similar to their meanings. So a clap is a clap and a moo is a moo. It means like when you are expressing the sound of a cow's voice, you will be likely be saying that it is mooing. So when you are expressing a sound like of a clap, you will most likely use the word clapping. So against like an example of such kind of poetic devices are like the splash, the bang, the flush, the booze, like all those words are expressing actually understand me. So those kind of words, they express really what you are talking about. Like they try to express like the sounds of what you are talking about. For example, here in an example, like an A3 shrill notes the pipe uttered. You heard as if an army muttered, and muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty lumbering, and out of the houses the rats came tumbling. So like those kind of sounds, like they try to express like what is going on, and they sounds most likely as what you want to express. So there comes another poetic device which is called alliteration. So alliteration, like it is one of the most used poetic devices. Like it is a phonetic structure, and it is repeated um, it is like it has a repeated usage of sound or letters used in the first syllable of a word. It is considered as the oldest poetic tool that's generally used for two or more words in a poem. Most of the poets take alliteration into account while framing a particular poem as charm and effectiveness. Sometimes like alliteration perfectly fits in tongue twisters. Like those are we are talking about alliteration, like we are mostly talking about uh, those, like it is more phonetic. Those are words like the way I can explain it, like they always like bringing the same sound, and it is like to an extent that like people can think like you are using tongue twisters. For example, you might be saying like the example which is showcased there on the screen, like she sells seashells by the seashore. So if, like she's selling seashells by the shore, it means like there's this kind of phonetic structure which is recurring in a way that is repeated. Like I have a repeated usage of a sound. Here which is being used is like and shells. Shells, sea by the shore. By the sea, it means like she's selling seashells by the seashore. I understand like this is coming back again and again. So like the ones which are being used in the tongue twisters. Like she's selling sausage around this, like those kind of words which are like cut again, and you have like which can make it even harder to, if you're not used to such kind of, I guess you understand. So now we have what we call the rhymes. So the rhymes are also another type of a poetic device. Just if there are no introns, yeah, we have one. So we have also the rhyme. Have the rhyme, like the most important poetic device that is widely used, and it is very important because a poem that does not rhyme is more of a text into, because poem is not rhyming, does not rhyme, means listening to the poem or the one who is reading to a poem, like more interested into that poem because it has no rhyme, it has no things like which are following up so that which can make it more sweeter to the ears. An example here, like these two, like it makes the poem like sound like a music which is going on, and this is what like a proper rhythmic structure because when the poem has this thing or which sounds like music, eyes of the one who is reading or listening to the poem, this makes it like more good and fine for the one who is listening. I said the like the night bright, like green, prologue, like those words which are rhyming. Like for example, if we say uh, like those words which are coming back again and again at the end of the poem are the ones which make it rhyme, or even at the beginning of the poem. It depends on the kind of poem that you're writing. So at the end, I will show you some examples. Then there is assonance. So this is a literary landscape, like when two or more words that are close to each other, like repeats the same vowel sound when like the same vowel sounds. Like for example, here you can say like the crumbling thunder of seas, the crumbling thunder of seas. Like we have here two like you have two words that are following each other and they have the same vowel sounds. Like they have the same sound, but like we have there the crumbling and thunder of seas, the crumbling thunder of seas. Yeah. And also we have like the consonants. So for the consonants now, like it is used both like in prose and poetry and can be understood like it is a repetition of sounds that are produced by the consonants in a phrase or a sentence. It is quite contrary to assonance, repetition of vowel sounds. Sometimes the usage of this word gives a rhythmic mood in a write-up. Like for example, those are words which produces uh, like it is a repetition of sound. Like for example, we can say toss the glass, toss the glass. We have the os and us, the os and us, like toss the glass. Those are repetition of sounds which are following each other. And also, for example, you have down goes down. See, down goes down. Like you have the on and on. Those are the like the sounds which are repeating each other. Like, and also we can also have like this other example like don't creep a beep. You see, you have the ip and ip, which are two sounds which are repeating each other and following each other. And then we have what we call the euphony. So the euphony is a repetitive use of melodic tones that are enjoyable to read or listen. Like soft consonant sounds like M, N, W, R, and F, as well as consonants that vibrate, such as S, Sh, and 3. And 3 so are used to create this. For example, you can say, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So for example, like here you have like these are melodic words which are following each other. Like there is a kind of melody which is enjoyable to read or listen. For example, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So like we have these kind of words which have a certain melody to the ears. For example, yeah, they said so long as men can breathe or eyes can see. You see, like there is a certain melody which is going on. Then we have what we call repetition. So in order to put like an extreme emphasis on our writing style,
Perfect.
we use. Yeah.
You can check if there are not some people waiting.
Okay, there are some people waiting, so
You can check. Yeah.
See. Man Leroy is waiting since very long. So then I will only talk about like 10 of them, and others you can be reading about them, and then afterwards, after we finish, and if someone have any question, you can text me about the other 10, about the other remaining poetic devices, but about these 10, if you have any question, you can ask when I finish, so that we can save a little bit of time. So we were on we were on repetition. So in order to put an extreme emphasis on our writing style, like we use repetition technique. Like if you want to put an emphasis on what you're writing, so you need to apply this device, which is repetition, like repeat some kind of words. So repeat some words in different sentences, or in different, like in the same stanza, you have the same and then, like for example, this example which is here on the screen, have like the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So we have these kind of words which are returning. We have, like for example, deep, keep, sleep, and sleep. So we have these kind of words which are like a repetition, but for example, for the first two words which are ending the lines, like deep and keep, it is a repetition of sound, and sleep is a repetition of sound, but plus a repetition. Like the sleep is a word which is repeating itself and giving a meaning to the stanza, which is like an extract. Yeah. Then we have what we call a cacophony. So a cacophony is the use of inappealing, repulsive, or harsh noises, mostly consonants, to evoke chaos. Like this kind of words like are expressing like something like things which are like noises, if we can say so, but also they are used, this kind of poetic devices is used to showcase or to evoke a chaos or a disorder or even a dread. For example, here we have like beware the jaybrook, my son, the jaws that bite, the clouds that catch, the freemius snatch. You see, like we have this word snatch, we have this word catch, we have this word jabberwock, so, and this word freemius. So you have those words like create a sounds which seems like to be noise to the ears of the one who is listening, and it makes like it catches the attention of the one who is reading or the one who is listening, so that he can guess like what thing is going on. Like when you say the clothes that catch, like someone is looking, like someone get attention is catched on, like it tends like to imagine like what's going on in this particular stanza. Then we have the ninth, which is rhythm. So like the flow of words in your poem, like throughout, like the flow of words in your poem throughout like each meter and stanzas creates a rhythm, a highlight of a particular element of a poem. So the rhythm shows like actually how the flow of your words are going. Like, are you going upwards? Are you going downwards? Are you in excitement? Are you like in cacophony way? Like, are you evoking disorders, or are you showing things which are happening like that are catchy to someone's noise? Like, how is your poem? How are your lines flowing to the style of your poem? For example, here you have an example like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? See, this flow is like more in a question mode. And then we have this last one that I'll be talking of, so which is the allusion. So by this term, we can understand it is a phrase or a word that is meant to cause something without mentioning it clearly. Allusion, which is yet another popularly used poetic device in English, is ambiguous statement or phrase that leaves a reader in oblivion or oblivion. So like when you say allusion, when you are making allusion to something, it is like you're saying something, but you don't actually state that thing. But the one who is reading will understand like actually he was saying this. Like Ningokuzim is actually, but you're making allusion to something. So if you can, for example, something which can be an allusion, like you say like uh, yesterday it was maybe yesterday it was too hot to sleep. So you are making allusion maybe of the heat which was there, but without exactly mentioning the heat. So that is, for example, what I can say, like ni ukuvuga ikintu ariko utakivuze but uri kukivugaho ariko nyine ntabwo gitindaho cyane. So that's what we call allusion. For example, I say then the leaves subsidized to leaf. So Eden sank to grief. Subsides to live. So Eden sank to grief. So then like and then Southern goes down today, nothing gold can stay. He was making allusion of what was happening in the Garden of Eden, how men like they started wearing those they knew that they were naked, and then they started wearing the leaves, and then they started and from then their struggle began, or struggle of suffering into this world, and then everything was started like going down, 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 and then what was good became now like what we have today. So nothing gold can stay, like nothing good can remain. So you can continue reading other kinds of poetic devices like irony, allegory, euphemism, and ambiguity, as well as others. But then to finish, before you ask questions, because we have less time, let me try to read a small poem. Let me check one of mine so that we can get actually like, so that you can try to identify what is going on in there. Can I try to identify some kinds of poetic devices? Let me do quick. Let me try and see this. Okay. Though it is in Kinyarwanda, but I guess we can try to get some kinds of poetic devices inside. So it goes like, byanze biracika, nanze guca ibyo nise ibidacika, nyamara niroreye ibyanjye bicika, bicibwa n'abo nitaga ibidacika, nganze ne ko nikoreye inganzo yanjye yanze kuganza, kuganza ibyanze bikankoborera ibiganza, ko naho nerekeje amaso bansunikiye mu manza, yitegereza nkarora, ndora neza ibyanze bikabora, nyitegereje yaneri y'ubwiza nkarorwa, data ati ntuzandavure, none iyo nerekeza ni mu mivure, kandi koko nanze kuvurwa ngira ngo nivure, umutima wanjye si kera ni kare, iga kubabarira hakiri kare, uko umuseke wawe uje kare. So I guess you can try to identify some of the poetic devices. So who can identify maybe which kind of poetic device again? Let me try to see in one of those that I talked about. Who can try to identify a repetition in this poem? Please, let's save time and say. Okay, if no one is is able maybe to identify what we can call, like, for example, a repetition. If you look at in the last stanza, we find a repetition at the end of the lines. For example, mutima wanjye si kera ni kare, igakubabarira hakiri kare kuko umuseke wahuje kare. The repetition there is kare, kare, kare. You see? There you can find a repetition, isn't it? So this is a device which is used in this poem. And then if you can look in the poem, who can identify what we can call, which one again? Let me look for the one which is euphony. Euphony, this 6-1, like, which is a repetitive use of melodic tones that are enjoyable to read or listen to. Who can try to identify the euphony in this poem?
Go on poem and then we see.
Yeah.
Ndakeka ari iya gatatu.
Ya gatatu.
Cyangwa iya mbere.
So actually, in the whole poem, you can identify this kind of poetic device because there is a sound which is recurring, which is in cheek. You see, like, there is a melody going on in that stanza, isn't it? Can you identify it, like the ones who are listening? Can you please say something? Let me, who am I going to ask? I'm going to ask you, Rola. Rola, can you please like tell me if you can really identify any poetic devices that I've been talking about? Please.
Okay, on the first paragraph, there is a repetition as well. Like, byanze biracika, nanze guca ibyo nise bidacika, nyamara niroreye ibyanjye bicika, bicibwa nabo nitaga ibidacika. Yeah, that chika is a repetition as well. Thank you.
Exactly. So as we have at least tried to identify like 2 of the poetic devices now, someone who has a question can ask. The floor is yours. So is there any question? Should I assume that you have understood? Because we have very few minutes. And
okay, yeah. I would like you to talk about why do we need to use poetic devices as poets? Why should we even care?
Yeah, exactly. That is a good question. So we need a poetic devices because if we don't have such kind of poetic devices in poems, it means like our poems will be just simply normally like texts, and the one who is reading will, or the one who is time is it is closing, but the one who is reading and the one who is maybe listening to the poem cannot be able to get the flow or cannot be interested in listening or in reading your poem because it will be like soulless. So you need to create that imagery. You need to show the people what you're talking about. You need to make it melodious so that they can enjoy listening to it. You need to make it like more interesting with new words which can trigger people to try to understand like what are you talking about. You need to make those sounds which can make it like catch their like their attention, which can make them catch their attention so that they can be interested into listening to that poem that you're talking about, that you are saying. For example, like those sounds which are engaging, like trying to show a disorder, like you see, and I saw him catching this thing. So you need to catch the audience's attention and the reader's attention when you are writing your poems. And the poetic devices are the most important tools which will help you to write such kind of poems which are attractive and also good for the people who are listening and reading your poems. So I think that is it. But again, I think our time is up because I'm seeing notifications that the 40 minutes are over. So if there is anyone who has a question that he or she cannot ask around here on the webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Parfait. I think we have 8 minutes for now before it ends. Yeah, if there's someone with a question, they can go on.
Guys, so I have been this of a bad lecturer.
You can ask them.
I have been this bad of a lecturer because imagine if I've been telling you this kind of things and then you understood nothing. That would be a very big problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
So,
Perfect. Hello.
Yeah, I understand.
I nearly didn't get the difference between metaphor and what is it? What is that? It slipped my mind. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
So you want to know more about the metaphors?
Yeah, the metaphor. I can't be able to differentiate them from the other thing you said. When you said that your heart is soft like the stone in the
Irony. Yeah. So I guess you are confused with metaphor and irony. So a metaphor, most of the time we use metaphors just to express like, okay. Uzi ikintu bita mu Kinyarwanda, ikintu bita like for example here, I guess time is now over. So, so what I can say is that when you are talking about irony, you are like making allusion to something, but this thing that you're making allusion to is not like something which it is like you say something, but actually you mean another thing. But when you're talking about metaphor, you are like making, like expressing a word. How can I explain this? Like when you maybe talking about a shoe, you may take a shoe to represent something which is not there. And then when someone is reading, he knows that this shoe that you're talking about is different from, is representing to represent another thing. But when you are making allusion to irony, you are speaking something which is the extremely opposite of what you are trying to mean. Because irony, if I use a word like when I'm making allusion to irony, something that I'm saying is completely opposite to what I mean. But when I'm using metaphors, it's simply that I take something to represent another thing. I guess you can understand. Maybe I tried to simplify it the most possible way.
Okay.
Did you at least get?
Maybe something I can add on metaphors. Mainly you use a metaphor to compare two things, without the use of as or like. You see, instead of saying like maybe you are beautiful, like maybe the sunlight, you can say you are the sunlight. You remove that like. You compare two things. You compare maybe someone with something without the use of as or like, because as and like that becomes a simile. So most of the time it is used as that.
Yeah, actually, that's it. So for the metaphors, like you are saying something that, like, you try to represent something by another thing. So you try to, for example, as the example I gave, she's as beautiful as the moonlight. So the moonlight is expressing the beauty of that person that you're talking about. But when it comes to irony, when you say, like, for example, if I'm using irony in the same sentence, I can say you are as beautiful as the moonlight, but actually I'm talking about the opposite of it. It's like I'm telling you that you are as, for example, if I say that you're as beautiful as the moonlight, but when I'm using irony in that sentence, it just means that you are as ugly as you are as ugly as the charcoals, for example. That's what for example, if it was irony, it would mean that it is you are as ugly as the charcoals, and then I say with irony, I say you are as beautiful as the moonlight. But with the metaphor, it is now something which is a bit different. You're just comparing the beauty of that person to the moonlight, and you say you are as beautiful as the moonlight. So the moonlight is representing the beauty of that person that you're talking about. But with irony, it becomes a very different thing. So it is the opposite of what you're talking about. So if I say, if it is irony, and I say that you are as beautiful as as the moonlight, it means that you are ugly when I'm saying it with irony. If I use irony in that sentence, for example, I would start like, she has a bad behavior. She has a bad behavior in her living, and she is not a good person while she's as beautiful as the moonlight. You see, and then that will be irony, because that person I'm talking about is, in the beginning I was saying that that person is a bad person, and then I say that she's as beautiful as the moonlight. That is irony, because I'm simply saying that she's ugly. I guess you can understand it, because irony is what you say is completely different from what you mean. Then with the moonlight, you're trying to compare, with the metaphor, you're trying to compare two things or different things, or try to represent something by another thing. So she said, did you get it?